Right. So yesterday, the chapter that we concluded with is social infrastructure. Okay. So social infrastructure and employment. The chapter says that it acts as a big tent during times of vulnerability. And therefore, the debate about withdrawing, or let's say the trickle down or social contribution just coming decreasing from the government side has now been put to the rest, and the government is now focusing more and more on social infrastructure. The trend also suggests that because as a percentage to GDP, both in terms of its education expenditure as well as its health expenditure, we have been seeing that it has been rising. We have not been reaching the target that we estimated, but nevertheless it has been a rise from 1.3 percentage. Now it is nearly 2.1 percentage of GDP that is being spent on healthcare. Clear. So as a whole, we are able to see that health social expenditure, especially from the government side, has been increasing. Apart from that, in order to deliver certain social benefits and to lift people from poverty and to bring about employment, government has also been undertaking certain things that is different from its, let's say, giving welfare directly to the people in terms of, let's say, subsidy, in terms of let's say in terms of manrega, like that, direct benefits. Rather than giving direct benefits, approaching development through the means of, let's say, an project like the aspirational district program will have much farther, much better consequences in the economy. That's what we saw yesterday. And there was even suggestions that this is a template for good governance which can be replicated elsewhere also. Right. So now about social protection, we see here that growth is necessary to lift people out of poverty. Of course, whenever there is growth happening, people come out of poverty. But growth alone cannot ensure that there are people who will always be protected during vulnerable times. That is why we need to protect them by giving them a host of services in the form of pension, the form of insurance and all. So yesterday we even saw in the financial segment how pension is a little bit increasing in India, how the number of subscription has risen, and how insurance also, both in terms of insurance penetration as well as insurance density, has increased. So the government has been expanding all of this, especially in recent times. The Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, Ayushman Bharat program, has been very pivotal in expanding the reach of social welfare for the people. Okay, right. Now coming to rural economy, the statistics says that in 2007, the population that were in rural economy were 70%. Now it has decreased to 65%. Rural population has decreased to 65%, and the number suggests that 47% of the population in rural areas are dependent on agriculture, and therefore the share of non-agriculture, non-farm activities in rural areas has been expanding. Right, gone are the days where we say that nearly 65% of the people are dependent on agriculture, are working in agriculture. These kind of statistics you should not use right now. It's an outdated number. So use this number 47. Since last 3 years also, this has been the number from the government. It is below 50%. Now other reforms, let's say, so this is a chart where they have explained about how electricity is expanded, all of this. Of course, you do know what are the welfare components, the development components that we need to look at. So just look at this chart and you'll get to know for livelihood what we are doing, for social security, Swast Bima Yojana, how we are giving, schools, education, weather, roads, all of this. Okay, so these are dimensions. Whenever you are asked to write about social welfare or socio-economic development, you can use all of this: sanitation, electricity, housing. These are the broad parameters that we are aiming to improve, and through a host of schemes we have been improving. For example, for electricity, we have a Saubhagya scheme. Likewise, for each and every segment, for housing, we have the Awas Yojana. Likewise, they have just put the numbers as to how much number of houses have been increased, what are the incremental figures that have come in these recent years. All these numbers they have put. No need to go into all these numbers, just know what we are aiming at. Okay. Now we want to, before concluding, two things that they have spoken at length is about this mission Amrit Sarovar, which was in recent times. Have you ever heard about this mission? Okay, this is about reclamation and rejuvenating water bodies. Okay, so this Amrit Sarovar, as part of this Amrit Bharat mission, we have selected 50,000 water bodies. This is a target. We have to select 50,000 water bodies, 75 water bodies in every district. 75 water bodies in every district, and make sure that the water levels are increasing in those areas. Okay, so watershed development program is already ongoing. Now we have this mission Amrit Sarovar launched since the last year, where it will be targeting on a district basis. 75, minimum of 75 Amrit Sarovar water bodies needs to be chosen, and accordingly projects will be undertaken. Okay, but the question is, when I was reading it, I was even calculating how many water bodies will be in certain districts in Tamil Nadu, Rajasthan and all. Right? How come that there will be 75 water bodies in each district? So whatever, so this is a target, 50,000 Amrit Sarovars we have to. Right. Now, rural governance. For rural governance, there has been two schemes. One, recently we have revamped it, the Rural Gram Swaraj Abhiyan. Okay, so Gram Swaraj Abhiyan, that scheme, and Swamitwa scheme. Okay, so a little bit of, you've heard the scheme, isn't it? Swamitwa scheme. So these two are enhancing rural governance in India. So what are these two schemes? What is the intention of the scheme? Let us try to understand. So the RGSA, Gram Swaraj Abhiyan scheme, applies even to non-Part 9 areas and especially focus on aspirational districts. So non-Part 9 areas means what? Constitutional Part 9. Okay. What does it mean? Constitutional Part 9 is Panchayat Raj. So Panchayat Raj, for example, in Northeast and certain areas, there are no panchayats, isn't it? So PESA, for scheduled areas where there is no panchayats, we are extending that. Likewise, this particular rural governance scheme has been extended to all, even though there are no panchayats. So as far as there are aspirational districts, to all those there has been focus on. So what they have done, it is focusing on capacity building and training of all the panchayat presidents, the personnel and all, to prepare convergent plans. That panchayats should not work independent of each other. They should bring a plan which is converging with each other's interest. So how they are doing, nearly 3 lakh of personnel have been trained under this scheme. This and all they are saying. This also aims at the convergence between the self-help groups and the Panchayat Raj institutions to bring them as part of policy making and decision making. So these are the broad aims. This we revamped in this year. It was to till 2020 only, this particular scheme. We've extended till 2026 by revamping this Gram Swaraj Abhiyan. So what does this mean? So what are the main facets of this revamped scheme? First, look at the words that they are using. They're reimagining the pre-RIs as centers of local self-governance. This is something that any scheme, any Panchayat Raj will give, the first aim will be like this. Whether they'll be saying transforming them or bringing them as part of grassroots development, whatever it is. So special focus will be on the localization of SDGs. Whenever we speak about SDGs, we have national targets. Now, because Niti Aayog is spearheading these SDGs, we have state-wise targets. We have to bring it all the way down to panchayat levels. So through this Rashtriya Gram Swaraj Abhiyan, what we are trying to do is we have to bring the localization of SDGs. So SDGs should not be just a macro aim, it should be a micro aim. Okay, the whole of government, the whole of society approach. So this Gram Swaraj Abhiyan tries to bring governance reform based on the principle of whole of government, whole of society, which means it is trying to be inclusive in its participation. Okay. So efficiently use the available resources for realizing sustainable solutions for local problems. So localized problems, how to deal with that, how to use the resources properly, and all these kind of things will be revamped. That is what this particular scheme is. Second, the Swamitwa scheme. This is regarding, I think you would have heard about how this Swamitwa scheme is trying to bring about reforms in land reforms, right? So land reforms by digitization of land and all. So that the scheme is about the survey of villages and mapping to improvise technology. So what does it show? What are the benefits of this particular scheme? First, it is to provide the record of rights to the village households. Record of rights, that is conclusive titling. Conclusive titling, right? From an inconclusive titling, we have to go towards a conclusive titling. So that is what it is aiming at. Second, it creates accurate land records which will help in rural planning and reducing poverty, property related disputes. Okay, so disputes regarding properties will come down. Rural planning by the government can be made. These are two main aims. Second, thirdly, we come financial stability. This is for, let's say, these are broad aims. If you look at the specific advantages, these are the four specific advantages. One, financial stability to citizens, because now they can use their property as a collateral for accessing credits and loans. One. Second, determination of property tax. Look at the stakeholders here. One is for the owners, one is for the government. For government, tax can be better, it can be utilized, it can be sourced properly. Third, creation of survey infrastructure and GIS maps that can be leveraged by any department. So this is creating a database. Now this database can be used by any department. Let's say the railway wants to lay some track. If it wants some parcel of land, it can plan by just looking at the Swamitwa database. Okay, so these are obviously benefits, and to support the preparation of a better quality Gram Panchayat plan. So we have plans, local self-government depends on the plans that are made at the Panchayat level. So the very making of the plans and the efficiency of this plan can be improved through this particular scheme. Okay, so two things regarding rural governance, the surveys emphasized. One is the Rashtriya Gram Swaraj Abhiyan that has been revamped in the recent time, and second is the Swamitwa scheme. So both are likely to enhance the governance at the local levels. Right. When all development goals like education, skill, and all are dovetailed and are converged together, along with technology, when you use technology, when it's compounded with technology, then revolutionary innovation can result, which is leading to growth and prosperity. Technology, especially in all the things that we have been discussing, the Swamitwa scheme is possible because of technology. Other schemes have been possible because of technology. The DBT is possible because of technology. So today, much of the social welfare component today is revolving around the use of technology. So technology has brought in much needed vibrancy in the way in which we conduct our social planning. So prosperity and growth, for which technology has been a great enabler of social upliftment. Right. So whatever we had lost ground during the pandemic in terms of employment coming down, in terms of gross enrollment ratio dropping, in terms of dropout ratios, in terms of burden on the health infrastructure, all of this we have now recovered and things are quite stable right now. So that is what is concluded in this chapter. So you can use this particular quotation It seems to be a fine quotation that an economy is primed for growth. Growth promotes development. Where development is employment generating, then employment is enabled by skills. இது யார் மாதிரி இருக்குன்னு சொல்லுங்க. There is another famous quote, isn't it? Abdul Kalam, when there is peace, அப்படின்னு ஆரம்பிக்குமே, peace in the world begins with harmony in the world, isn't it? Right. So likewise, he is given. So nowadays, don't keep writing what APJ Abdul Kalam said in your essay paper. Try to write these kind of quotes. Okay, I'm not joking. You can write. நல்லா இருந்தா யார் சொன்னா என்னப்பா எழுதலாம்ல. உங்களுக்கு இதுவும் கோட்டட் பை நரேந்திர மோடின்னு சொல்லிட்டீங்கன்னா இன்னும் மார்க்ஸ். Right. The 7th chapter that we will discuss is climate change, sustainability chapter. Here, usually we will have, it will be quite a boring subject chapter always, because it will only be giving statistics as to under the national NAPCC, all these missions, what we have done, full on data. But deviating from this kind of boredom, this particular year, it has started a debate and discussion speaking about why today it is very difficult for developing countries to embark on climate action. Okay, so first few pages it is discussed about that. So we'll try to read about that before going into the facts. Okay. The UN SDG portal says that 700 million people worldwide will be at risk. Use this. You will have a particular chapter in GS3, environment, or anywhere. Sometimes if they are asking about economy also, you can write. Right, so you can start your answer by saying that according to the UN SDG portal, nearly 700 million people are likely to be displaced. Okay, by drought alone, just by drought. Right. So all this it gives many such data, and we all know that of course climate change today is a big threat. Climate change and global warming is a threat that no one will have a debate about it. Okay, so everyone will agree that it is of course a threat in India, not threat to India, but across the globe. And therefore, there is no doubt that humans are primarily responsible for this change, isn't it? All these changes right now are anthropogenic in nature, and everyone seems to agree with this. So the agreement only stops here. When how the countries, they have agreed till this extent, and beyond that, when they come to discuss as to what to do, there seems to be no consensus arrived, isn't it? So what are the divergences that we have? What are the disagreements that we have, and how today climate change is becoming a challenge to pull off? That all we will try to read. I have just given you some important phrases or sentences given by the particular chapter so that you may use it. Okay. So despite agreement, there is still so much divergence about what we can do. Why we have this divergence is because science itself is not giving us a clear evidence of whether using this or cutting down these emissions will in fact translate into a better world. Can climate change be reversed? It's the main question. Can climate change be reversed? Science does not give us clear-cut answers. Can climate change be stopped? We may stop. Look at the words that they are using. If we are cutting down emissions, if we are trying to cut down the emissions and global warming by 1.5 degrees Celsius, then maybe the global warming can recede and things may improve. But there is no conclusive evidence that if we do so, it will happen. For the next 30 years, if we are embarking on climate action, by compromising all our next needs, there is no guarantee that we will be having a better planet, isn't it? So that is what poses a biggest dilemma. There is no guarantee. Second, there seems to be certain literature which says that the stock of the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere have already set a train of events. For example, we all know that in the geological time scale, we do know how certain climatic events have been occurring, isn't it? So the ice age has been occurring. Why did the ice age occur? How did global warming take at that time? Were humans responsible for that? No. So without you and me being responsible for that, that event came. Likewise, we cannot be so sure that this kind of climate actions and things will immediately be arrested because of our actions. That is why there seems to be many people today having in 4 years ago, whenever we talked about climate change, it was seen as a tragedy of the commons. But today you can find that leaders, political leaders, and those policymakers are having completely different views. You can see how the earlier administration of the US government was calling this climate change action as a farce, isn't it? Donald Trump adana sonnaru. Climate change, the activism of climate change is a farce. It is not true at all. They are just trying to pull down our development. So many political, across political spectrum, these kind of view is rising in recent times. Okay, now so this talk is already there, and it could set a train of events. We do not know whether we will stop it or not. So IPCC, let's say, says that the challenges that today we face in terms of global warming and climate change are mainly due to cumulative and historical global emissions of developed countries. So this is one part of the debate. Today the IPCC says that whatever climate risks we have today is mainly the doing of whom? The developing countries. But in the recent assessment report, in the sixth assessment report, IPCC says that the highest vulnerability is, or the hotspot of vulnerabilities are going to be concentrated in the developing nations, and Asia is the most vulnerable of the continents. Like India's vulnerability is also very high in terms of its report. So most of the countries, the island countries especially, which have not been a part of this greenhouse gas emissions, will now bear the consequences of any such changes, isn't it? So that is a big issue, and that's what we say. Ironically, the burden of adaptation. So let's say this is a problem. Now we have all come together and we are discussing as to what should be done. And look at every argument. They say that we should not consume energy. We should not use coal. These countries would have developed on the usage of coal. Only through energy dense intensity, every country has developed in the world, isn't it? But today we are on a phase where we are preaching to other countries that do not use coal. So this is the irony that is seen in the world today, that the cost of adaptation or the burden of adaptation is the highest for those who have contributed to the least. Right. So whatever the arguments may be, all these arguments are there. But with this, can you just stop and say, let us not be worried about climate change? We are not so conclusive about the guarantee. We do not know what will happen. But does it warrant that we should just be lax in our attitudes? No. Okay. That is what, because let's say there are two possibilities. Maybe by cutting down emissions, 30 years later or 40 years later, the planet will be better. Rather, if we just keep on using whatever we want, conventional sources, global warming is heating up. And what if suddenly after 30 years or 40 years, it becomes too much that even if we act, we are not able to do certain things? Then it will be very costly miss, isn't it? That is why we cannot afford to just go by our guts or feelings. So even though science is inconclusive, if we do not take actions, that will be a criminal negligence. If we do not take steps to make the planet more livable and less dangerous, that will be a criminal negligence. Right. So this is what people are saying, countries are saying. But this line of argument is mainly taken forward by advanced countries. Advanced countries, whenever it comes to this talks, global climate talks, they'd be saying that even if we don't have any proof, we have to do, yeah, or if we don't do, then it will be a criminal negligence. So we ask all of you to do, they will say. But it is easier for them to say, because why? Because they have set their priorities right. They have been on the advanced stages. Now, for whom is this all a problem? For developing countries like us. Okay, so what are the dilemmas for developing countries? First of all, how should the resource be utilized? Should it be utilized for the very core developmental process, or should it be used for adaptation? Climate change, of course, needs so much of focus, so much of expenditure towards that. Should we use our resources for the sake of adaptation, or should we use our resources for the upliftment of poverty? So developmental aims are clearly in conflict with that of the climate change goals, isn't it? Now, and it is only theoretically elegant to say, it very beautifully says that it is theoretically elegant to say that when we give focus to renewable energy, there will be new jobs that are created. Nowhere in the world will things be like smooth like this. When there is going to be a massive disruption, we just can't say that traditionally, because the conventional and the thermal plants and the coal dependence has rewarded us in such a manner only. Today we have economic systems like this. Just by saying that we have to shift towards renewable, the renewable shift may have, of course, a positive impact in the form of creation of jobs, but it will not be in a position to absorb all the demand for labor, isn't it? So it is only on theory it will seem smooth, never in practice it will be. So that is also a big problem. Take the case of China. China has, of course, gone with a very pragmatic approach by saying that we will not scrap the usage of coal. We will not scrap the usage of coal. We will try to supplement our energy basket with other renewable sources. So that is also the kind of approach that we are also having. We are not going to cut down on coal. Rather, we are going to bring more and more renewable sources so that our energy demand doesn't go down. Okay, right. The jobs that are likely to be created in the green economy are also tilted towards a skill and technology intensive than traditional industries. If we take the case of traditional industries, let's take the coal thermal power plant. If you establish a thermal power plant, it will guarantee that at least 20,000 people in that area will get work. If we establish a solar plant, how many will get employment? Only the one who is supplying you solar panels will get work, isn't it? So this green economy only tries to will bring more jobs that are inclined towards the high skill, but the low skill and the medium skill will not be increased in these areas. Take the case of, let's say today we have battery technology. Do you think that battery technology with that, let's say everyone, let's just imagine a hypothetical situation where in Chennai everyone is now having an electric vehicle. Just there will be electric poles there. You will just have a charger. One electric pump, petrol pump is gone. There are at least 40 people who are dependent on that electric pump, petrol pump, isn't it? Likewise, how many petrol pumps are there in Tamil Nadu? Isn't it? So we cannot just this is just maybe an argument. The shift will not be smooth. Okay, right. That's why there is a Nobel laureate, an economist, who says that the best defense of a developing country against climate change will be their own development. They should never compromise on their development. If they want to do something meaningful, if they want to be resilient against the vulnerabilities towards in climate change, they should go on the path of development, never compromise on their development. If at all they take the let's say policies that they will compromise development and give importance to climate change, then it will be counterproductive for them. That's what he argues. This is one of his arguments in his studies also. Right. And see, the other thing is about finance. In corporate finance, there is a theory that always we should try to lean only on our resources. Only then profit will maximize. When corporates need debt, they will take loans, they will float bonds and all. But they will come to a stage where they will only resort on their own equity sales, on their own resources only. They will be trying to mobilize their funds. In that same manner, India also, for our global needs, especially for our climate change needs to dependent on internal sources. We cannot be completely dependent on external sources. Today we have all this global climate fund, green climate fund, where the countries have pledged that we will donate this much amount, and from that only we will be undertaking our climate actions. If this is the case, you can find that in the Paris deal, the developed countries said that we will be pledging $100 billion. Not even $20 billion has come till now, isn't it? Right. So securing the funding from the developed countries and especially multilateral organizations has become rather difficult in recent times because they don't have the intent to mobilize it. They say when they gather together for the COP meeting, they will say, yes, we pledge. Next time they will go to their domestic, their countries, forgot. Next year again they will come. We are renewing our pledge, they will say. So willingness and incentives alignment of the private. Let's say these are all areas which are going to open up avenues for the private investments, if we argue in that manner. It is of course true. But the private willingness will be very, very less here because initial thrust should be given by government, isn't it? So we can't expect that the private will come and invest all in solar panels. It is only the government should do. This year, especially in case, Europe, being an advanced continent, has switched to coal to keep their homes warm and well lit. Usually, they are dependent on natural gas because of the geopolitical situation. Now they compromised all their goals. They said, put aside all our goals and targets, consume how much coal you want. Don't import, try to reduce natural gas. So suddenly when they have a development need, they throw away all the things and they could shift to whatever it's priority for them, isn't it? This demonstrates, first of all, the need of energy security as a prime requirement for country. We cannot find fault with them because it's their own domestic interest, isn't it? They have to give priority for it. Second, it does not seem so strange or irresponsible when developing countries say that we will put our own growth and development ahead of us. Because that has been the argument in the common but differentiated responsibility. It has also been accepted that the developing countries first will give priority to their needs and then only they will embark on this climate mission and all. So if till now the advanced countries have been preaching to us and having a very moral attitude towards us, saying that you give priority to your own development, you are not concerned about all this kind of climate change. When we are saying that no, we will only give, that seemed to be irresponsible. But look at the case of Europe this year, isn't it? So when time comes, people will shift. So that also gives some credibility to the argument of developing countries that they need their priorities should also be their developments. The OECD and Harvard, in one of the recent surveys that they conducted, when they addressed why it is difficult for countries to implement climate change policies, especially in the developed countries or advanced countries, they found that citizens in the developed countries were very reluctant to change their lifestyles, especially in terms of how they eat, how they drive, and all these lifestyle that they have been adapted to. They will never compromise on that. We will all be preaching about cutting down on emissions, but fly in planes for a single person, isn't it? Global leaders do that, isn't it? அதான் நம்ம பண்றாங்க. For one person, they will be emitting so much carbon dioxide, and they will go to the UN and give a speech saying that we should cut down on carbon emissions. Okay, so that is the lifestyle change is very much difficult, but in the surveys conducted in developing countries, people are able to do, people are able to adapt. They say that if many things are happening to the environment, will you be able to adapt? People say yes, but in the advanced countries, people say no. It's very difficult for them to adapt to a different or alternative lifestyle. Carbon pricing mechanism was once thought that it will all solve the problem of this. Some countries will do bad, some countries will do more, achieve more, and through carbon trading, we can try to neutralize this risk and all. It has not been effective till now, isn't it? Second, the next criticality that we see is that the availability of materials. We have been pushing for energy security, and our energy security today comes from solar, from wind, from green hydrogen, from battery, isn't it? These are all alternate sources. But for all these alternate sources, what do we need? We need new metals, new materials. In fact, I think in the last year's survey, it said that in the initial years, shifting to renewable energy will be so much energy intensive compared to the existing sources. You need to mine in the existing scenario, 40% you have to bear the cost, 40%, let's say, emission is going to happen because of, let's say, your use of conventional sources. But if you use renewable, at least in the initial times, it will be more than 60%, it seems. In the Mari, there's a huge problem for us in our shifting also. So in the last 50 years, geopolitical battleground will be in the last 50 years, crude oil was a battleground. Now the countries will be fighting for lithium. They'll be fighting for rare earth metals. Okay, so this also becomes a crucial constraint for us. So, and that is why a globally synchronized energy transition to non-fossil fuels will be very difficult to pull off. Understand that the demand for crude oil, when in 1970s, America was consuming so much of crude oil. Was India in a position to consume crude oil? No. India was not in a position to consume crude oil. The volume of our crude oil and all was not so much. The vehicle density was very less in India. People's per capita was very less. Our development itself was very low. And therefore, we could not consume crude oil. And therefore, the availability of crude oil, one is consuming, and therefore it is reaping the benefits. It's trying to utilize it. And slowly after that, it is becoming advanced. It is no longer consuming that much. And it is giving space for other countries to consume. That is what is happening across the world now. But now we are going for a deliberate shift, isn't it? This focused shift, when everyone shifts, each and every country is shifting towards renewable, but the concentration of resources and the materials required to shift for renewables is only available in select few countries. Lithium concentrated in only few countries. Cobalt only in few countries. So crude oil dependency is also in few countries, isn't it? That has been the battleground for all these years. Now this will become. So that is why the economist here says that accelerating the targets for carbon reduction too aggressively will create larger disruption than anticipated. So you should be very cautious in your shift towards renewable, or else it will be globally a disruptive economies will disrupt. So climate action has become a macroeconomic issue today, but we don't go into what are the macroeconomic costs for it. It has become an economic issue, of course, but what are the costs involved in our transition? We do not have enough data. We don't have enough literature for that. And if you see, this is also one of the key arguments here. Advocacy has taken precedence over analysis. advocacy today, climate change talks seems to be more in terms of climate change advocacy. Activism has taken place over prudent analysis. Those who are making that we will, I will be vegan, I will not exert pressure on this world globe. There are many such people today, isn't it? Just ask them why. They'll not give you one scientific reason behind it. They'll just say that we people are responsible for global warming. We people, have you seen global warming? Have you seen Chennai, the shore going down or going up? No, isn't it? Of course, this is all speculations. There has been some evidence also for that. But beyond that, people who are making this climate change advocacy, they don't have any facts to back it up. Second, whether we like it or not. So these are all some problems that some dilemmas or issues related to climate change till now. Now coming to what we should do. What we should do, whether we like it or not, whether we have political differences, ideological differences or not, climate change is something that we should never neglect. Right? It will occupy the airways. It will become the major discussion between countries in the near future. Whether it is inconclusive, whether it's conclusive, whatever it might be, it will dominate the next global theme. Okay. For India, let's say, take the case of India. India contributed to only 4% of the cumulative global emissions till 2019, but is considered to be the most vulnerable because it has a coastline, it is monsoon dependent, it's much of its population resides is dependent on agriculture. All of this makes India very much vulnerable to any kind of global climate risks. Despite having very less, contributing very less, India spearheads one of the most robust climate change actions. In recent years, through data, the survey argues that despite this COVID, we have never compromised. We have delivered both on the developmental aims and we have also not cut down on our climate goals or climate targets. We have been trying to reach them both, unlike Europe. Europe gave only priority to its development. But now we are giving more to, we are not trying to balance them out. Okay, so what and all, I'll just give this, I'll share this slide. Please note it down. You would have known about all these 8 missions of the NAPCC, isn't it? So what all have been done? For example, till October 2022, 61 gigawatt of solar power. So all of this data, I don't think you'll not even remember the data after today. Therefore, only key facts you try to remember. Right. So INDC. So as part of its proactiveness, we find that in August 2022, India updated its INDC. Right, nationally determined. Now, see life. So under this updation, lifestyle for environment. So this is what contrasts the study of Harvard. In Harvard study, it was said that in developed countries, citizens are not willing to adapt. But here we are bringing it as a policy making. We are giving it the highest policy level importance, that we are including it within the INDC itself. Right. So adopting a climate, so all these are all, just go and have a look at it. The features of the new INDC. Right. Here we have 3 quantitative targets. So one is reducing the energy intensity. Why we have we have changed this is also because of our Panchamrit strategy. Okay, so 3 of that targets have been included here. So reducing the emissions intensity by 45%, achieving 50% from renewable sources by 2030. Earlier it was 40%. We have updated it. Earlier it was 40% target. Now it is 50% targets. And you'll be surprised to know that the survey and even the government statistics say that we have achieved 40% by 2022 itself. That is why we have updated. By 2022 itself, today, right now, look at the data, 40 point some percentage comes from renewable sources. right? And also increasing tree cover and all. So forest cover is, of course, when we increase forest cover, it meets the quantifiable target of the INDC, because INDC says that we will create a carbon sink, isn't it? So whenever there is an increase in forest cover, it will help us in getting a net gain in our carbon sequestration. So in recent years, there has been marginal gain. You can see here, I think 7128 or something, some 100 million tons of carbon stock are the, this 2019 report versus this 17 versus State of Forest Report 2019. Okay. So 2019 report versus 2021 report, if you see, there is an obvious increase in the forest cover that translate into a 30 billion carbon emissions sink. So last 2 years, we have increased the carbon emission sink by 30. So what is our target? 3 billion tons we have to create. Okay, so already there is, the increase itself is 3. No, let's not go into whether they are calculating open canopy as forest. Okay, see, of course, there is, to be critical, the government even considers trees, shrubs, and even open canopy as part of its forest. If you neglect all of that, there is going to be a visible reduction in the forest cover. But that's what the government defines what forest is, isn't it? So approach. So this is what we have seen. 40% we have achieved. That's why we have updated it to 50%. But out of this, if you see why we have increased it to, why we have been able to achieve, because of the inclusion of large hydro. Earlier we didn't have large hydro. We didn't define large hydro as renewable source. Now we have started to include large also as renewable sources. That is why we are having this. If you just take out this particular component, will be at least, we will not be 40, will be around 33% only. Okay. So investments in renewables also, since 2014 it has increased, but due to COVID, so it has followed the trend, and since COVID again it has shot up. In the last 2 years prior to COVID, there was reduced investments, but now there seems to be a resurgence in it. Okay, so it, by 2030, the report suggests that, the MNRE report suggests that not only 50, we will be even more than 50 by 2030. The mix of energy basket will get more from, right. So in recent times, we have been talking about green hydrogen also, isn't it? So this will be crucial for the decarbonization of harder to abate, harder to reduce sectors, such as fertilizers. For example, fertilizer sector is dependent on natural resources, is dependent on fossil fuels, refining, methanol generation, maritime, all of this, iron and steel, everything needs to, for iron and steel you need coking coal. For the hydroelectric import பண்றோம். No, we are exporting hydroelectric power. அதாவது என்ன அப்படின்னு சொன்னா, see, we export and we import. For example, இது எங்க எல்லாம் கன்சிடர் பண்ணோம், from Bhutan we have a power agreement with Bhutan, and from there we will be, from Nepal we are having, from Bangladesh we will be sharing. So அதெல்லாம் ஆட் பண்ணிப்போம். Okay. So maritime and all. So these areas which are dependent on fossil fuels, green hydrogen will be the key for substituting these kind of sectors. And when we talk about green hydrogen, the cost of electrolyzers is a very crucial commodity here, because only through electrolysis we are able to bring about green hydrogen, isn't it? So green hydrogen, the cost of electrolysis today is very high. Just as we had the same scenario of solar panels some years ago. Solar panels were very costly, but right now it is very cheap because of greater adoption. So through policy impetus, the more and more we adopt, The cost of electrolyzers will play a crucial role in the adoption. Therefore, we need innovation, we need more technology, especially to cut down the cost of electrolyzers. Okay, so Niti Aayog is coming up with a strategy for that. So enormous, and this will reduce energy import and all. Obviously, you do know what are the obvious benefits of green hydrogen, right? See here, this is what I was saying. A typical electric car requires 6 times the mineral inputs of a conventional car today. To produce a conventional car, whatever minerals you need, more than that, 6 times extra you need certain elements in order to produce an electric car, because you need sensors, you need batteries, you need so much of materials for that, especially rare earth materials. This, if you see here, you can consider here that the global supply chain of this critical minerals is highly concentrated. We've discussed a little bit about it. Take the case of cobalt. Cobalt is concentrated in Congo. Rare earth elements are concentrated in China. Copper is concentrated in Chile, Peru. Lithium is concentrated in, the highest source of lithium is in Australia. Second comes Chile, Argentina, and the lithium triangle and all will be there. Okay. So look at this. This is 100%. Out of 100%, look at the countries having this. In almost most of the critical elements, it is very highly concentrated in select few countries. So how the supply chain is going to be distributed, we do not know. So this is going to be a very crucial challenge for us. We may be speaking about renewable energy, and let's say we are shifting to all the chip manufacturers. Shortage of global chips itself was becoming a major problem in automobile manufacturing the last year. Likewise, if all of this is going to be a problem, what we are going to do, we don't know, right? So we have to set this right. For that, the survey suggests that we need to have a strategic resource or strategic resources for such minerals. Let's say today, do we have strategic petroleum reserve? We have something like that. We store it so that if there is a sudden supply disruption, we can make use of it. Likewise, in the early stages itself, you have to plan for strategic minerals. Okay. And towards that end, the Ministry of Mines has created a joint venture called as Kabil, which will undertake all of this. Recently, Kabil signed an MOU with Australia for the sourcing of lithium. Right. So India in the COP, recent COP 27, in the COP 27, laid forward its long-term strategy. Right, long-term strategy. And this long-term development strategy tries to combine elements of both its developmental needs as well as its climate commitments. Right. India has a right to equitable and fair share of the global carbon budget, and it is calling for climate justice across the world. So these are the salient features of this LT-LEDs, focusing on the rational utilization, encompassing the national hydrogen policies, biofuel usage, ethanol blending program, urban development, where structures and planning will be based on climate resilience, all of this. Clear? So financing of sustainable development. See, for this strategy alone requires tens of $1 trillion over the years. How we are going to source it? Green bond could come handy. So India has not issued so much of green bond in recent years. For example, a small country like Chile has floated so much of green bonds, but India has not bond. So last year, the government came out with something called as sovereign green bond. Isn't it? Only 4,000 crore of green bonds have been issued last year by private companies and all and banks, but it is very, very less when we compare other countries, right? UK alone has floated nearly 1 lakh crore. Like that, green bonds are being issued. We also need to ramp up, and that is why last year in the budget, the government came out with something called a sovereign green bond. The government will issue bonds, okay, for financing it. For this purpose, the RBI has notified from this year onwards, likely the first set of green bonds will be issued. Right? And SEBI also has put out its regulation for the issuance of green security, for the ESG compliances and all of that. And the business responsibility and sustainable reporting norms has been, earlier it was only for 100 companies. The top 100 companies should bring out a report as to what it has undertaken as part of its business responsibility and its commitment towards sustainability. Now it has been expanded to 1,000 companies. So these are all some efforts that are taken towards sustainable financing. Okay. So COP27 highlights, COP15 highlights also has, they have dedicated a page, but I leave that to you because you would be aware of that. Go and read a little bit about it. Okay. What COP27 and COP15. COP15 is regarding Convention on Biodiversity. Okay. Right. So agriculture, industry and services, right? These are separate chapters, but we'll just go through it. So agriculture and food management. So you remember these words. In most of these pages, they have been using these words. Every sector, they have been using this word, right? This particular sector is having so much of forward and backward linkages. You also try to use it now, okay? Whenever you write an answer, use these words. That industry is having a strong backward and forward linkages with other sectors of the economy, and it will have a huge multiplier effect because of that. Apply it then. Right. Hmm? No. I'm not going into food processing. I'm not going into the syllabus of the UPSC because in food processing there is a particular phrase that backward and forward linkage. No, this is a general term. That is a sector having cross links with other sector, especially. அப்படி இல்லப்பா, agriculture is dependent on industry. It gives materials to industry. It is dependent on agriculture services. So service sector also gives. So likewise, it is connected both in its backward operations and its forward operations. That's what it's a general meaning here. So the average annual growth has been 4.6, rapidly emerging as a net exporter in the last, of course, in the last 30 years, India has been the net exporter of agriculture products. In this year, the record high, not this year, last financial year, record high of $50 billion we reached in terms of agriculture exports. Okay, this is the record high that we have reached. Right. So while Indian agriculture has performed well, it needs reorientation in the backdrop of certain challenges like climate change, fragmented holdings, suboptimal farm mechanization, low productivity, disguised unemployment, etc. Write these kind of things as point by point, you'll get marks. Okay. When we ask what are the problems faced by agriculture, people will be stuck. ஒரு பாயிண்ட்டுக்கு மேல வராது. One point they will write and they'll keep on waiting for the next point to come. See, when you have these, இதுதான் அவங்க கேட்குறாங்க. One, climate change. Two, fragmented land holding. For this, if you put a data, how much is the land fragmented in India? Fragmentation உடஞ்சு உடஞ்சு வர்றது. It's not about distribution. Inequality in distribution கிடையாது. Fragmentation, what is the average land holding in India? Agricultural land holding. No. Right, it was 1.9 hectares in the earlier census. According to the recent agri census in 2011, the average land holding has fallen to 1.01 hectare. And in the next update, the agriculture census is going to come down. In the next, definitely it will go below 1 for the first time, isn't it? So these are all fragmentation of land holdings. So these are all you can write. Suboptimal farm mechanization. These words may not appear to you. You will know that the usage of material instruments, the usage of machines are all less. Rather than writing like that, as an elaborate manner, they will be writing when a farmer only uses hand, but he does not use machines. Okay. Suboptimal Farm mechanization. 1 point you'll get marks. Okay. So sustained increase in the food production across. There has been no changes due to pandemic and all. Even during pandemic, agriculture was the only sector which was showing positive growth. Okay. So crowding in of private investments in agriculture is a good sign that is recently seen. For example, if you see the level of private investments, public versus private, if you see, 4.7 percentage public invested, government invested, 9.6 private invested, then it came down. See, government is having no business in agriculture, but it is spending close to 4.6 percentage of the total agriculture investments. Private, it's the agriculture is the largest private sector of India. So it is obviously reasonable to expect more from them, but the private investments have been always low. So since the last 2 years, the private investments in agriculture has increased due to several schemes like the participatory guarantee scheme, where privates are being incentivized to bring to open up cold storage facilities for agriculture. These kind of things will definitely crowd in private investments. So private investments are increasing in agriculture. Right. So given the MSP and all, you would know. So what is MSP? So regarding a trend in MSP, higher MSP has been given for pulses and oilseeds. For all crops, the MSP has been promised to be 1.5 times. So this is the promise of the government. But beyond 1.5 times, it has gone for pulses and oilseeds in order to improve the cultivation of pulses and oilseeds, and also to meet the dietary changes happening in India. Clear? So agriculture. Pardon? Which? Millets. Pardon, I'm not getting you. Millets. Ah. Yeah, yeah. See, so benchmark price. See, we do not have support, MSP support for majority of the millets. Only for few millets we have. Nutri cereals only we are having. We do not have for a majority. So if we have to incentivize the cultivation of millets, first of all, the price uncertainty needs to be addressed. We have different ways apart from MSP to address the price uncertainty of farmers. For example, no vegetable is under the MSP. Vegetable are in fact the most volatile of the commodities. So we since 2015 onwards, we have something called as a price stabilization fund. Okay, so that will be utilized for creating storage facilities, for ensuring that the supply of all of this is not going up and down, and also making sure that the farmer is not being forced to sell his product at a very cheap rate. Likewise, benchmark pricing is something where the government is trying to contain the prices from falling below a level or going too much. For both these aspects only, the benchmark pricing loan kudukranga. But MSP is something that has been in the news that is given more priority. Benchmark under it is not mandatory for the government. Government need not be answerable to the people. But here MSP has become a very important policy making here, isn't it? That's why. So MSP, of course, why we are saying that it is given higher MSP? By giving MSP, one of the main criticisms of MSP is what? Trade distortion. Second, rice wheat monopoly. Rice wheat monopoly in India is occurring mainly because of the MSP that is given to rice and wheat, isn't it? To shift towards other commodities, the government needs to procure oils, procure oil seeds, procure pulses. And that's why, in order to incentivize people for producing more, they have been increasing MSPs of these commodities. Okay. So agriculture credit. Last year, so you look at the number credit here. This year, what was the agriculture credit target? Yesterday we saw in the budget. Budget target, what was the credit? 20 lakh crore. Agri credit will be targeted at 20 lakh crore. So last year, 16 lakh crore was our target. How much did we go? 18.6. Okay. right? So today, for mechanization, we have a scheme called as a submission on agriculture mechanization, custom hiring centers and all. For example, huge tractors, threshing machines, and all will be there in custom hiring centers where farmer can go and pay a nominal fee and ask them to render the services. But the problem here is there are many farmers which are having less than 1 hectare. For this 1 hectare, it seems not feasible to bring such a big tractor, isn't it? Do you think that bringing a big tractor and plowing the field, let's say 50 centimeters, half an acre, right? It will be wastage of resources, isn't it? So things are changing right now. So we need not be just manufacturing big tractors, heavy machines. We need to now change the requirements of the machines which are suitable to the fragmented lands. Now coming to organic farming. Today, India is said to be the largest organic farming country in the world. 44 lakh organic farmers. And I think there was another number also, right? So how do we promote? There are two major schemes for the promotion of organic farming. One is Parampargat Krishi Vikas Yojana. So this is the apex or the most important scheme for the promotion of organic farming. For Northeast region, we have a separate mission. Okay. For natural farming, we have another scheme which is a sub-component of this. That is called as Bharatiya Prakritik Krishi Paddhati Yojana. Okay, so BPKP, that is the scheme under which we are promoting natural farming. So by promotion of natural farming, recently the ZBNF adoption has increased in India. Zero budget natural farming in India has increased because of this. Right. So PM Kisan, if you see, 11 crore farmers are benefiting because of this. And in recent study by the ICAR, it is said that PM Kisan is addressing the liquidity constraints of the farmers. You might be thinking that 6,000 is not a big amount. Giving farmers 6,000 is going to be meaningless, you might be thinking. But the research says that, of course, it is helping the farmers for the liquidity needs, especially in the procurement of agriculture inputs. For small and marginal farmers, it has been very much useful. For example, they are not only using it for farm inputs, they are using it for a daily consumption. They are using it to buy food. They are using it to buy milk. Likewise, whenever they are facing any financial constraints, this is becoming an important source of revenue for them. So Agriculture Infrastructure Fund, under the Atmanirbhar Bharat, we brought this fund in order to create post-harvest infrastructures. Fasal Bima Yojana has become the largest crop insurance scheme of the world. Right, it's the largest crop insurance. And you can see the adoption. For example, Fasal Bima is mandatory for those who take loans. For those who take loan, definitely they have to subscribe to a Fasal Bima Yojana. That's how we have been increasing in the early stages. Second, earlier also it was voluntary. Okay, earlier also it was voluntary. Now also it's voluntary. It is voluntary for those who do not take loan. But for those who take loan, it is compulsory. Okay, so anybody taking loan, Fasal Bima Yojana protection will be coming under them. Recent studies say that the share of non-loaning, which is they don't have a compulsion, but they also have subscribed to Fasal Bima Yojana. That number has been increasing, and this shows the acceptability of this particular insurance scheme by the farmers. During weather extremities, it has been proved to be very decisive in securing the farmers' income. For example, Tamil Nadu, it gives an example of Tamil Nadu that the claims ratio, how much you claim and how much you receive. It was 168%. 168% you are receiving means what? You claimed 1 lakh, but how much is the government giving you? Insurance companies are giving you 1.6 lakh. Right? In Tamil Nadu, in other states also, 200 times claims, 200% claims have all been met, it seems. இது எதுக்கு நடக்குதுன்னு சொன்னா, it is Fasal Bima Yojana is on the basis of area based, which is even if you don't claim, they will give you. Even if you don't claim, you are a subscriber to Fasal Bima Yojana, your crops is lost. Maybe in your area things have been well, but in that particular zone, if in that year there has been below average monsoon and below average harvest, accordingly, according to the land value and according to the harvest value, they'll be giving you some amount, whether you apply or not. That's how this is increasing. People actually claim 1 lakh, but they are giving 1.68 even to those who have not asked for it. Okay, that's why. So it has become very important in securing the income of the farmers. So horticulture, do we have a mission for horticulture? No mission. Horticulture mission ஓட்டுக்க வேண்டியதானீங்களா? Right. National Mission for Horticulture Development. Okay. So ENAM, under the ENAM, we have been trying to bring reforms in the marketing. Climate smart farming practices, especially not for ENAM, has been increasing recently. For example, slowly gaining solar grid system. Farmers are now being given incentive to put up solar plants in their area farms and connect it to the grid. So that system, use of artificial intelligence, usage of drone to calculate, drones are being utilized by insurance companies to assess the crop damages right now. That usage, nearly 1,000 agri-tech companies have developed in the last 4 to 5 years, it seems. This all points to adoption of climate smart agricultural practices. So 2023 was announced as International Year for Millets. Okay, so millets are smart food. Okay, they are climate resilient, and several of the UN Sustainable Development Goals can be met by this. India is also the largest producer of millet. Okay, so 50 million tons we have produced. It is accounting for 80% of Asia's production and 20% of the global production. Right. So a new millets have been considered, have been defined as nutri cereals, because only cereals are covered under NFSA. Under the NFSA, people are entitled to free nutri cereals only. Earlier, millets were not classified like that. So way back in 2017, the government classified it as nutri cereals. Therefore, in some areas, the government can also give millets as part of its PDS system. Okay. So the Millet Research Institute has also incubated certain centers, and it was also given training to many of the millet farmers, it seems. So I think yesterday also we saw, isn't it, global hub for millet was one of the budget proposal by naming it Sri Anna. Okay. So dairy sector, yeah, in fact, out of the allied sector, the most important is dairy sector. 8 crore farmers it is. So in terms of other production, ranks first in milk production, third in egg production, 8th in meat production. That is the statistics of India. Okay, third in egg production. So in order to give importance to animal husbandry and allied activities, a separate development fund was created under the Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana. A new fund is created called as the Fisheries and Aquaculture Fund. So there is so much of untapped potential in animal husbandry and these areas. By this, we can definitely improve, double the farmers' income. Okay. Now, from cooperatives to prosperity, recently, I think even yesterday also, we were speaking about cooperatives, that one of the budget proposal is that new cooperatives will only be asked to pay 15% as taxes. Okay, so look at this numbers, 8.5 lakh registered cooperatives in the country, 29 crore members in this particular registered cooperatives. 98% of the villages are covered by the PSCs. I think even in the budget yesterday also, regarding PSCs, we had news. Primary Agriculture Credit Societies. What are they? See, the structure of cooperatives goes like this. State cooperatives, then district cooperatives, then rural Rural in sense district கீழே என்ன இருக்கும் primary. So these are the last point of contact for the farmers. Okay, so almost 90%, 98% of the village have at least one primary agriculture credit society. Okay, so I think in yesterday's budget proposal, a member can only withdraw up to 20,000 at a time from this PACS. In the budget, it was increased to 2 lakh. Okay, so this was also one of the reform. So this recently the government has been giving more focus to this primary agriculture credit societies. It caters to 19% of the agriculture finance. I think based on this, there was a question last year or in 2021, I don't know. They had asked about the primary agriculture credit society and the district cooperative banks caters to the largest bank loan to farmers. Is it right? Right? DCCBs and PACs, they are all part of cooperatives. Cooperatives altogether only give 19% to the agriculture finance. And therefore, they are only a minor player. In fact, it is a commercial bank which gives the most credit to. So that was incorrect. So new cooperation policy is in the works since December onwards. So its drafting has been made, it seems. And then Multi-State Cooperative Societies Amendment Bill 2022 was placed before the Parliament in the month of December this year, in 2022. Ama. Right, whatever you want, agri loan. Agri if you are a farmer, you are going for an agri loan, then it will be considered as part of this. Okay. எதுக்கு இதெல்லாமா see mechanization ரொம்ப அதிகமான வால்யூம்க்கு அப்படி போயிடுவாங்க. Here see they are already stretched out. Primary agriculture credit society cannot give you 10 lakhs. Understand? Because it is a cooperative, which means it is the members who have brought their money. It is not going to earn from someone else's income. Okay, that's why it is impossible. If there are some credit societies which are performing well, they can give well enough. It is not that they should not give. They don't have the finances to provide. That's it. So this multi-state cooperative societies amendment bill, in order to bring some governance reform only, we have brought. No need to go into this detail. If you want, you can just go through PRS la poi adu pathina salient features மட்டும் என்ன பார்த்துக்கோங்க. Right. So food processing, this is very important because food processing is a important mains topic. So look at this particular data that they have given. 8.3% growth annually in the last few years. 12% of those in the manufacturing sector itself come from food processing, not only in agriculture. Therefore, it acts as a bridge between agri and industry. Right. The value of agri food, agri exports, processed foods, this have now shot up to 10% of India's merchandise exports. Out of the total India's export, 10% comes from food, processed food, agriculture and processed food. Okay. So optimum development is very, very important because this has links of tackling several development concerns like rural unemployment, rural poverty, food security, food inflation. All of this can be addressed because of having a robust and a sound food processing sector in India. So Niti Aayog strategy identifies that the lack of adequate cold chain infrastructure is a critical supply chain bottlenecks that leads to massive post-harvest losses, and the harvest losses alone is 92,000 crores. What is the prospect of food processing industry if they ask? Start with this. Say that in the recent years, because of the lack of food processing sectors and because of the lack of cold chain, 90,000 crores have been lost. If they are processed, then high value can be generated, isn't it? Uneven geographic distribution of cold storage facilities. In some areas there is, in some areas they are not. So this is also one problem. Logistical barriers are also there. So So 3 main challenges with regards to its infrastructure related to food processing it is addressed. The logistical barriers, if you see, the national highway contributes only 2% of our roadways, but it carries 40% of our food. Okay, so we have to diversify it to other segments of transportation, use the state roads, use airways, use railways, and that's why the government has come out with, do we have such special facility? Trichy, Kisan Rail, and Kisan Rail is there. Krishi Udan, isn't it? Krishi Udan is a facility where flights will be provided. Okay, so அந்த மாதிரிலாம் பண்றாங்க. Right. So that's up. So industry. So when I take the case of industry, see, many of you have this small misconception that industry is manufacturing. No. Manufacturing is different, industry is different. Manufacturing is a part of industry. Okay, that's why you will have this distinction that mining, whether it is part of industry or whether it's part of primary sector. I think many of you, I think you also asked, isn't it? 7 years. See, as an activity is a primary activity. Mining activity is a primary activity, but it is not put in the primary sector because agriculture is, of course, dominant, but it will be put under the industry sector. It will not be put under manufacturing. Industry comprises of mining, manufacturing, electricity, and construction. All these taken together is industry. Okay, right. So manufacturing, this industry, how much it is contributing? What is the importance of industry in India? If you ask, 12 crore employment, 31% of the GDP is contributed from industry. Out of which, if you see the subsectors, you can find that the biggest contributor will be, of course, manufacturing. Manufacturing, 17.5%. What is our goal of increasing manufacturing? We have national manufacturing policy. Under this policy, what is our goal? Very good. We have to increase the manufacturing share by 25%. Okay, so that has been a dream since many years. That's why Make in India, we brought all of this. But because despite all of this, it is hovering around 17 to 18. This is in fact the most labor intensive segment in India, but it is not picking up. That is why employment generation is not so high in India. Okay, right. So the other benefits of importance of industry is that, one, it ensures that domestic production can accommodate domestic demand and therefore reduce what? Imports. So import reliance can be reduced when we have a better industrial setup in India. Industrial growth has multiplier effects, which translates into employment growth. Industrial segments also spurs growth in other sectors like services, banking, logistics, etc. Right. So as far as the performance of industry is concerned, there are two areas in which the survey has talked about. One is the demand stimulus, and second is the supply response. What is the stimulation? What stimulates this particular industry? One, non-de-escalation of prices. In the first half of the year, there was prices were escalating, but it was, of course, escalating, and after that, it refused to come down, isn't it? So this non-de-escalation has already keeping this core inflation high, and high input costs are there. Okay, this is one of the problem. Second, declining retail inflation. Despite this being a problem, declining retail inflation. Here CPI is likely to decrease, isn't it? When it decreases, demand is likely to increase. So export has fallen. Inflation, especially in the wholesale price, is there. But despite that, the moderation in core inflation and retail inflation is likely to become a stimulus for industry in the next year. Second, strong export, but export is weak. in this particular quarter right now. Deleveraging and private capital investment cycle we have seen yesterday. How today the balance sheet of the banks are better, balance sheet of the companies are better. So companies are earning more profit and therefore they can do a little bit more. Interest coverage ratio and debt to equity ratio has improved. This is one of the question. Do you remember? Interest coverage ratio. What is interest coverage ratio? The amount of liquidity you have to cover your interest payments. The more you have, better you are. 5 times interest they can pay the amount of profit that they are generating. That's what is 5 means. Okay. Debt to equity ratio. Debt is more or equity is more. Let's say debt to equity. My share value is 100 rupee, but my debt is 80 rupee. Then what will be the debt to equity ratio? 0.8. That's what was there. Now it has decreased to 0.4, which means the equity has either increased, the value of the equity, or the debt ratios have come down 40. So the debt of companies have come down. That's what we see is the deleveraging, isn't it? So these are all better parameters, and therefore industry will be better to absorb any kind of demand stimulus. They've also responded a little bit better, and that is seen in the IIP index, in the PMI index. What is PMI index? Purchasing Managers Index. If it shows beyond 50, then it means that it is an expansionary trend. All through the last year, it was a little bit high, except during, let's say, in the month of April and all. After that, it was all high. So core components, all the core components of the 8 core industries. 8 core industries is there, isn't it? All the 8 core industries have shown positive signs. And especially if you see sector wise, motor vehicles, computers and all have been doing well, but textiles, pharmaceuticals and all have not grown at an expected levels. Right? It does a comparison of various industrial sectors. No need to go into the subsectors of the economy. Okay, will not go into that. No need. See, demand stimulus. This is not under demand stimulus. In fact, the PPT more about it. Okay, this is one of the problems why non-de-escalation. Non-de-escalation means prices were high during the first half of this year. Later, prices had to come down, isn't it? But prices did not come. That's what we are calling as non-de-escalation. Non-de-escalation and high input prices, because crude oil was high, other supply chain disruption was there, due to which industry needs to absorb this loss, isn't it? So that loss was high. And gradual passing. They say that this is a problem because earlier, I think yesterday also I said, high inflation and all was there, but they didn't pass it on to the customers because they were on the recovery stage. When they are recovering, when the economy is not performing well, if they suddenly translate their input costs into output costs, people will not buy. Therefore, they were absorbing that loss. Now, when things are happening to change, gradually they will pass. That is going to make inflation sticky. Clear? Because now things are moderating, but the core inflation may remain high because the manufacturers are slowly passing the earlier burden right now to costs. Okay. That's one of the problem that we can see. So industry credit, you see here, as a percentage, it has been growing. MSME percentage, you can find that during the period after the period of COVID, especially after COVID situation, you can find that the share of MSMEs in the industrial credit has been growing. Right. So overall, credit growth, as we saw in both the retail segment as well as the industrial segment, have been growing. The MSME, if you see within MSME, the GVA, gross value added within industry, MSME contributes to 30% as of now. Earlier it was, last year it was 29, now it is 30%. Slight decline in the overall output because of pandemic. Then things started to regain back. So all the things recently what the government has done for MSME, changes in the MSME definition, the Udyam portal, the Samadhan portal, the TREDS, trade receivables e-discounting system expansion, which is more and more players are now brought in to trade this e-discounting system. So what is e-discounting? Trade receivables e-discounting. That is what is called as factoring. Okay, factoring business. Hmm? அது வந்து RODTP ல invoicing அது. See, this is trade receivables. Let's say for both domestic or external, if they are to receive certain amount of income, revenue because of a sale, but it is being delayed, let's say, if they need liquidity, they can sell this particular bill. That is called, earlier it was only on the basis of, this system is called as factoring. This system, this whole process of buying these bills is called as factoring business. Futures கிடையாது. என் பில்ல say commercial bill இருக்கு, government bond இருக்கு. Government bond you are investing. Now you need liquidity, you are selling it off, isn't it? Like this, I have a bill, which means it is an obligation of you to give it to me. I have given you certain goods for which you have to pay me, but you will pay me only 3 months later. But right now, if I need liquidity, what will I do? Right? So அது வந்து என்ன பண்ணலாம்னா, you can sell it across traders, across certain people who do factoring business. Non-factoring companies also can be done. TREDS ல அதை பண்ணிடுவாங்க. So in this e-discounting system, the bills will be given at a discount and others will buy. So this manages the liquidity needs of the MSME. Okay, right. So electronics industry, especially, there are many industries that are spoken of. Specifically, electronics industry has been doing well, it seems. India aims at $3 billion by 2026, and right now it is 118. But within 4 years, it has to double, isn't it? So we also have an aim that we will increase by 2025 $1 trillion digital economy. Today, what is the GDP of India in $1 trillion? 3.12. I think right now it will be at least 3.3, 3 point something. So 3.3 trillion right now. And let's say if it is showing a healthy growth, it will go around 4 trillion in the year of 2025. Out of that, 25% of revenue should come from the digital market economy. That's one of the targets of Digital India law. So if that is the case, electronic industry should at least have a share of 300 billion in that. And India has got the position of being the largest mobile manufacturer of the world. Second largest, not largest, second largest, behind China. And with regards to electronics, we are also going to have, because of the geopolitics happening and because of the supply chain constraints that we have felt, we are likely to have certain kind of benefits. If you look at what happened post 2020, USA is in fact the largest supplier of electronics. Okay, at least in terms of design. They manufacture it in China, but in terms of design, the patent, the IP ownership and all is there concentrated in USA. Okay, USA felt that the global supply chain was not to its advantage after 2020 because 10% only it is manufacturing its own chip. 90% is dependent on East Asian countries, especially Taiwan. Okay, so Taiwan TSMC தான் உலகத்திலே இருக்கலே பெரிய company, okay, for manufacturing of chips. So they have this was seen as a critical shortage in their own development, and massively in order to bring about the shift in this supply chain and to reduce their dependency, they have gone with an Chips Act, Chips and Science Act 2022. Actually, last year they brought. Under this, it is a financing act under which 71% of the funds will be utilized for R&D in the next years. For research and development alone, they have said that they will be utilizing how much? 71% use பண்ண போறாங்களா incentives. They are going to give incentives. Similar to that, we also have been giving more and more focus towards chip manufacturing and fabrication of electronics under the PLI scheme and DLI scheme. We have two particular schemes in India: production linked incentive scheme, design linked incentive scheme. Design linked incentive scheme is specifically for manufacturers of electronic chips. Okay, so அதை பண்றதுக்காக தான் அதெல்லாம் பண்ணோம். So here also we are giving financial support for setting up of semiconductor fabrication units in India. I think you'll be surprised to know that we are giving incentives to bring 30 nanometers, 26 nanometer fabrication units, to bring it to India. We are giving incentive. Look at how far we are. The world is now producing 3 nanometer chips, isn't it? So now we are giving incentive to bring 26 nanometer chips. அதையாவது இங்க பண்ணுங்க அப்படின்னு சொல்லி incentive. So coal, and I think last year also coal consumption was high. Different measures have been taken towards self-reliance. For example, private participation was opened up in coal production. The captive coal mining norms were relaxed. They can sell it to anyone now. FDI was brought in under the automatic route. Expansion of existing mines, new mines were all created for the coal reduction of coal dependence, also bring self-sufficiency. Iron and steel also, India is now the second largest steel producer in the world. Second largest crude steel producer in the world. 20% iron and steel exports dominate. Right. And for that, PLI scheme and all has been announced. No need to go. And textile industry, if you see, it is also a significant industry, but this year it has not been very positive. Textile industry has shown a very low growth. 4.5%, especially it is very important because a large number of women and the rural population are covered under this segment. It is ranked third in the production. And coming to pharma, in pharmaceutical industry also, these are the two areas which has shown tepid growth, very dull growth only this year. Okay, so in terms of pharmaceutical, India is third in the production by volume, but in terms of value, it is only 14. This is one of the pretty large problems in India. Third largest production. Okay, but volume, if you take the value of that, India ranks 14th in the world. Okay, it is mainly on account of generic medicines. We produce so much of generic medicine, and you will be surprised to know that in terms of generic medicine supply of the world, India's share is 20% in the world. 20% generic medicine. In vaccines, especially since the last few years, vaccine supply from India has increased, and today's supply of the world, 60% of the vaccines are supplied by Indian pharmaceutical companies. 60%. Right. So especially for PLI, for pharmaceutical businesses, PLI schemes for APIs, for medical devices, for pharmaceuticals and all, separate categories have been given for addressing the specific problems of this industry. Automobiles also, some bright spots has been revealed this year. Third largest automobile market. India has become the third largest automobile market after Japan and Germany. USA is not even in the top 5. Top 4, 4th, 5th, 5th layer. The first is Japan, second is Germany. Now we have come. US the first car manufacturing. Who is first? Automobile. Germany. Okay. So now India has become the third. Contributes this automobile, despite being a small segment, contributes to 7.4% in the overall GDP, and 49% of value is created in the manufacturing GDP. That is why we always look at automobile to look at what is happening in the manufacturing segment. In 2018, when there was a crisis in the automobile segment, there was a whole drag on the economy. One segment falling, How can it drag the entire economy? Because it contributes nearly half to the manufacturing. Isn't it? கிட்டத்தட்ட 7% GDP-ன்றது உங்களுக்கு குறையுது அப்படின்னு சொன்னா, it will obviously be a drag, and it is also linked to other areas also. Automobile sector is not a standalone sector. Many of the services will be provided to automobiles. Okay, right. So domestic EV vehicles especially will grow at 49% year on year. Compounded annual growth rate will be 49%. Even if you just go and seek a comparison of how much EVs were sold last year and this year, nearly 100% jump will be there. So likewise, in the next few years, at least 50% is going to jump. It is also likely to create 5 crore direct and indirect jobs. But as in the climate change we spoke, this transition will not be smooth. Right. So in order to sustain the demand of automobiles, for both the demand side, the government has been giving the FAME subsidy. By subsidizing the cost of automobile, it is creating a demand for automobiles, and to give incentive to the manufacturer, it's giving PLI scheme. Right. So both ends there are. So the challenges recently has been that two-wheeler sales has seen the lowest in the decade. Last year, in 2022, despite recovery, two-wheelers were sold the least in India in the last decade. This is a problem. Whether people are shifting towards car or whether they are waiting for another models to come, we do not know. Right. So that's the case. So that is a challenge. And it's also finding that the increasing cost of two-wheelers is also one of the problem, and especially insurance cost has increased. If you see, usually right now the ex-showroom price will be something, but when it comes out, on-road price will be very high. Even scooters today cross 1 lakh, isn't it? Minimum. Scooters say 1 lakh market price. Why? Because nearly 20,000 rupees extra you have to pay beyond this ex-showroom price, because nearly 10,000 they are charging for insurance. Why? 5-year insurance. Why 5-year insurance? Motor Vehicles Amendment Act. Okay, these are all structural problems which is shooting the cost of automobiles in India. So prospect as a key player in the global value chain. So how are we going to become in industry? If the next phase, if I have to leverage and capitalize on the global market next time, we need to definitely be part of the global value chain. And how is industry going to be? There are 3 points or 3 advantages that we can make. One is the government's drive for manufacturing by capitalizing and leveraging on the Make in India schemes. Demographic edge we have. Young population. Second, shifting to more automated and process-driven manufacturing. Right. We are a product-oriented manufacturing right now. We are not a process-oriented manufacturing. Once we shift to more automated and process-oriented manufacturing, the efficiency of production will increase. So that is also likely to boost up India, and our competitiveness can become better, the quality can become better, and we can get embedded in the global value chain. So recently in the global innovation index, it is found that India has entered the top 40 for the first time. Right. It was 81st rank in 2015. Now it is 39th rank. So in terms of innovation, in terms of the number of patents filed, in terms of the number of trademarks filed, India has been improving. So that also suggests that industry is likely to be better. So Make in India and PLI scheme will be 2 arms or 2 extensions which will enable this manufacturing and industry to be a major part in this global chain. Okay. Now, this is a very important part that we speak towards the end, that startups, if you see the startups, one positive sign of a startup is that 48% are from tier 1, tier 2 and tier 3 cities, which is a testimony of our grassroots development. Usually when we see a startup, the startup capital will be Bangalore, but since last year and before that, Delhi and Noida has been improving. Okay, as the startup capital. But now things have changed. Last year also in the survey we had this, that it is increasing more to tier 1, tier 2 and 3 cities. Like that, this year, in the last 2 years, if we see the number of startups, 48% of them have come from tier 2 and tier 3. So this is a very good sign that overall development is happening. Okay, right. For this, the notable initiative, Startup India, Nidhi scheme, the AM scheme and all is there. Look at the number of jobs created also. You can find that in 2017, 43,000 were created. Now, 269,000. 269,000 or 2 lakhs? Dana. 2 lakhs, isn't it? So 2 lakh jobs have been created in the last year because of startups. And startups also in India is pushing us. The reason why we need startup is because it makes people, especially the young, to become entrepreneurs rather than job seekers. Right. One of the biggest problem in India is that entrepreneurship levels is very, very low. But this mushrooming of startup will become a stimulant, especially for the youngs, to become job creators rather than job seekers. Okay. So on which side you will be, I don't know. Job seeker. Now, an interesting trend it speaks about is flipping of startups. Flipping of startups, reverse flipping of startups. I will do a concept based on. What does it mean? What does flipping mean? For example, Flipkart. Where is it? Flipkart. Headquarters is in Bangalore. Okay, Bangalore is its headquarters. Is it an Indian company? Hmm? Now it is Walmart. Okay. Earlier, when it was not owned by Walmart, whatever it is now owned by Walmart, which means its ownership is somewhere else. But the parent company of Flipkart, after being a startup in India, after not paying taxes to the government for 5 years, after becoming an established player, they set up a company in Singapore saying that this will be our parent company and we will be a subsidiary. Okay, which means Flipkart Singapore will be the parent. Flipkart India will be its subsidiary. The income generated by Flipkart India will now go to Singapore. And Singapore will be the owner. Being the owner, it will have the rights of all its IP, all its profit, everything it will have its right. This process is called as flipping. Startups are created in India, but over a period of time, the corporate structure all flips to some other country. Okay, so this technical term for this is called as startup flipping. Okay, so it becomes a subsidiary in that manner. Why is this happening? Many startups have flipped in India in recent years. Why is this happening? The survey notes that there could be many reasons. For one, the commercial taxation, personal preferences. For example, someone will have the ambition that I want to go in the global market. I don't want to be an Indian company. I want to make it a global company. There could be personal preferences. Some will seek after the commercial preferences. They will feel that rather than putting as a company here, if you put it in established in Singapore, you'll get some incentive. For that, they will do. So that could be market access. London Stock Exchange, USA's NASDAQ. These are, of course, far higher and superior compared to India's BSE and Nifty, isn't it? The chances of you mobilizing funds through an IPO and listing in the National Stock Exchange or Bombay Stock Exchange, compare it to listing yourself in the New York Stock Exchange. What will be better? New York Stock Exchange, because so much of finance is there. So much of trading volume is there. So that could be one of the reason also. So market access, capital valuations, incentives in the form of no withholding taxes in Singapore, exemptions on capital gains in Netherlands. In Netherlands, there is a system that if there is a parent company And through the shares, through the transfer of shares, if they've earned some value, the value will be exempted. India went reverse and put retrospective taxation on Vodafone. For some transfer that happened way back, they were taxing right now in 2011, saying that you have to pay 2001 நீங்க இதுக்கு முன்னாலாம் பண்ணீங்களா, give all money. Like that, things are happening. So tax benefits is also, tax stops and incentive is also main driver of this happening. So what we can do, we have to accelerate reverse flipping. We have to first stop. We have to stop reverse flipping, and we have flipping, and we have to reverse this flipping. How can we reverse this flipping? Some recommendations are given. First, simplify the grant of interministerial board certification. A startup will get certification across various ministries. That process should be simplified. Simplify the employee stock exchange program, stock option program. Employee stock option program is becoming a new kind of thing in corporate reality. What does it mean? Employee stock option. Yeah. Apart from salaries, they'll also be given part of their salaries or component as part of shares. Okay. So that's becoming a new trend. That process should be simplified in India. We should not be trying to penalize this. Right. So simplify the procedures for capital flows. Overall, general capital flows, we have to be simplifying. Multiple layer of taxes and uncertainties of resolution or disputes. These are all also increasing this flipping tendency. That all should be reduced down. So funding and incubation, mentorship with big partners, private entities for startups, all of this can reverse this process, is what is the recommendation of the survey. Okay. So with this, with solution-oriented strategies, startup will continue to be the messengers of India's entrepreneurial dynamism. So services. So services also, if you look at the year 2020 and 2021, in 2021 it seemed to grow, but this was on account of base effect. Last year, most of the segments went nearby the pre-pandemic levels, and some agriculture and all were beyond the pre-pandemic levels, and even some industries, construction also neared the pre-pandemic levels, but only services were below the pre-pandemic levels. This year around, this has changed, and now we see that even the services is completely out of the pre-pandemic levels. So this year, for this quarter, for the year of 2021, so a small jump itself seems to be high, isn't it? In terms of this pie chart, you can see that this is very low, but still it seems to be very high. But since this one quarter and also the signs of the third quarter also shows that it is likely to increase in terms of its value. Bank credit also increased, just like in industry. Bank credit to services also improved by double digits. This is also a key variable. Some headwinds can be observed in the coming months. Slowing growth in India's major partners. There are other partners of India, other partners of India, they are facing some slowdown in the growth, but India's exports may improve because runaway inflation in advanced economies drives up the wages and makes the local sourcing very expensive. Understand? Because of the things that are happening in America and other parts, they are facing high inflation, recession situation, all of this. That can give some benefits to India because services requires, service can be done in any part of the world, isn't it? That's why you need something, you can outsource it. That's what services offer. So many of the countries which are facing inflation will face a price pressure, due to which our services will become more competitive and they'll try to outsource that to India. So outsourcing, especially India is known for capturing this outsourcing market. So outsourcing is likely to pick up because of the uncertainties in global markets. The UNCTAD says that in services, India is the 7th largest destination. And last year, financial year 22, also saw the highest FDI in services. $84 billion came in the form of services. Both service exports and service imports have been following a similar trend, and it has been better. So tourism, 21 million jobs were lost during pandemic in tourism. 21 million jobs were lost. So India's tourism sector, of course, it is not fully recovered. It is the only sector in services which is still showing a degrowth, and it is not increasing compared to the pre-pandemic levels. You can see, so this is the average footfalls or tourist arrivals. Nearly 10 lakhs, 9 lakhs people used to come to India every year. Since 2020, no one came. And 21 onwards, 22 onwards, things are slowly catching up. Okay, so below pre-pandemic levels, but still in the next few years, again, tourism is going to become far sustainable. So there is the signs of revival, especially because of certain trends of tourism. For example, leisure travel. Leisure travel is business come leisure. This kind of trend is coming. MICE tourism, MICE tourism now, meetings will be there, investments will be there, corporate meetings will be there. Like that, everything in the team outings, we have been in the IT company, you will know. Every once in a week or once in a month, they will be going. They'll give all, they'll exploit you to the core, and after that, they'll take you to team outing. Okay, so this kind of team outing and all, this has become a trend recently that already they would have planned for one earlier in the year itself that this year end the team should go. They will go seek for business, there will be meetings, there will be investments, everything will be happening. So this kind of new trends in business activity and tourism activity is happening. Okay. Second, IT and the business processing sector. If you see, of all the exports or the revenue that we have generated last year, software product is 50%, isn't it? 50% of the services is provided, especially in the IT BPM. IT BPM na business processing management also. So hardware, IT services, and the call services, all of this will be included. Of this, software solutions which were provided, that occupies the most out of this industry. Okay, the entire, all the sectors, including the subsectors, were showing a double-digit growth last year. Even during COVID, this particular segment did not fall. It was maintaining its share. Okay. So what drives this year, what is going to be driving this particular industry or this service industry is one, penetration of digital technology. Made in India, digital first solutions. Repeatedly we are doing. So increasing adoption of digital technology is going to spearhead or going to sustain the demand created for this particular services. That ஓ அப்படியா ஓ ஐடி சர்வீசஸ் தனியாக இருக்குது ஓகே ஐ வாஸ் திங்கிங் சாஃப்ட்வேர்னு அதுலேயே வந்துடும் ஓகே ஸோ ஐடி சர்வீஸ் தனியாக போட்டிருக்காங்க ஸோ ஐடி சாஃப்ட்வேர் ப்ராடக்ட்ஸ் isn't it? This is not software service, software products. சாஃப்ட்வேர் ப்ராடக்ட்ஸ்ன்றது கம்மியாக தான் இருக்கும். நம்ம மைக்ரோசாஃப்ட்டே விலை கொடுத்து வாங்க மாட்டோம் இல்லையா? ஈவன் ஐ திங்க் திஸ் போர்ட் இஸ் ஹேவிங் a pirated version. So what drives this industry? If you see, digital revenue has increased from 30 to 32% from 28%. Okay, digital revenue. Margin defense. What is this margin defense through operational expenses? If you see why Americans are preferring Indian companies. For நைட் ஷிஃப்டா? அவன் நம்மளை ப்ரிஃபர் பண்ணுறாங்க, நம்மளுக்கு வேற வேலை இல்லாமல் நைட் ஷிஃப்ட் பண்ணுறோம். Cheap, isn't it? We are able to offer them cheap. Despite all this inflation, despite all the input costs increasing, why we are still able to provide cheap? Why? Because we have cut down our margins. We operate on a thin margin. If we exceed that margin, because global competition is there, if we exceed that margin, the supply or the demand will go to some other place, isn't it? So we are able to sustain the margin. We are able to defend this margin by cutting down, or let's say not translating it. How we are able to do that? By trying to, even if this year has been a problem, we are trying to scale up the business. We are trying to bring about excellence in operations. Through that, we have been able to deftly manage the defense of our margins. That is one of the reasons why there is so much demand for Indian services. India is a digital talent nation. Okay, digital talent nation. So of course, there are many who have become financially literate. Many are using smartphones. All of this is likely to drive. So leading in the hybrid work models, work from home models have become a new reality. So work from home model is obviously going to create more and more demand for software services and all these. So these are the main drivers of this particular industry. So payments report recently says that e-commerce is likely to show at 18% annually till 2025. We do not include e-commerce under this IT-BPM. Okay, e-commerce is a separate segment. So this increasing e-commerce is likely to offer gains for the MSME also. So MSME also are likely to, for example, e-procurement. Government also is having something called as government e-marketplace, isn't it? Government e-marketplace last year has seen 1 lakh crore orders. Value, not number of volumes, value. 1 lakh crore of value has been ordered by the government e-marketplace, out of which 57% of supply has come from MSMEs. This is a good sign. Okay. And e-commerce especially has been driven in rural India by increased smartphone penetration. Now we can find that even I was surprised recently when I went to my village. I was surprised that people were buying from Amazon. Okay. So things have changed right now compared to last 2 years, isn't it? So penetration in the tier 3, tier 4 cities has expanded last year, and that is seen in the reports or in the business model of Meesho. Meesho app irukku, yeah? Meesho caters so much to this tier 2, tier 3, and tier 4 cities. Their entire revenue, nearly more than 70% of revenue, comes from these cities, not tier 1 cities. Tier 1 cities will not buy from Meesho. Okay, because it is cheap, they have a strong logistic support, all of this is there. Yeah. And the ONDC model, the digital infrastructures, the e-rupees and all is also likely to increase e-commerce adoption in India. So globally, technological solutions cushioned the pandemic, isn't it? Whenever we could feel that technology was acting as a buffer in times of pandemic. So India took the lead. Fintech adoption was 87%, substantially higher than 64%. There was a recent report which said that India's index of adaptation was 87%, but the globe was adopting 64%. Whenever we spoke about digital, whenever we spoke about smartphones, whenever we spoke about internet rates, 5 years ago, things were all very different. When we compare the internet rates, the speed rates between other countries and us, we would not even be comparable. The average download speeds of India prior to Geo period, I'm saying, prior to the Geo revolution, if you could see, was 500 kbps. When world was operating at an average of 5 Mbps, we were operating at 500 kbps. But today we are comparable. In fact, we have higher data speeds in almost other countries also. This we have seen yesterday, isn't it? So let's come to the last topic. Physical and digital infrastructure. Right. High quality infrastructure is obviously very much necessary for accelerating economic growth. Right. Empirical evidences. There are many evidences that show that there is a strong correlation between the quality of infrastructure and overall economic development. If you see at this particular chart given out by an organization, you can find that the per capita GDP and the quality of overall infrastructure is positively correlated, which means the higher the quality of infrastructure, if we are here, it is most likely that the GDP is also high. And therefore, GDP is intrinsically linked to the quality of infrastructure in a particular economy, and we need to focus on this. So in the recent years, we have been giving focus not only to physical infrastructure, but also to digital infrastructure. Right. So that's what the survey says, that physical infrastructure alone cannot be the answer, because today we are on the rapid phase of financialization. Economy is getting more and more financialized, and therefore we need to go for, rather than giving more importance to physical infrastructure, we also need to ramp up our digital infrastructures. So this confluence of digitization and innovation has become a game changer for India, because it has initiated changes in the adoption of digital infrastructure. In 2009, 17% had bank accounts, 15% used digital payments, only 4% had, in fact, something called as digital IDs in 2009. Now, 10 years later, tele density has reached 93%. The average number of phones that we have, tele density, telephone access today has increased to 93%. Over 1 billion people today are having digital IDs, especially in the form of Aadhaar. Okay, Aadhaar and digital form. Billion people are having digital, in the digital form they have downloaded, it seems. Aadhaar. Okay, so very huge jump, and 80% of the people are having bank accounts today. From 17% of the adults, how much we have increased? All the way up to 18%. This has been a transformative leap, especially in digital adoption for India. The BAS working paper estimated that without this technology, with this technology, what we could achieve in 10 years period would have taken 50 years if we had not adopted technology. Right? Always quote this when you speak about, let's say, when they are asking the link between technology and development. When they ask about the levels of digitization and technology, how technology helps digitization or helps in financial inclusion. I think in one of the mains recently I had discussed to you about a question regarding how digitization helps in financial inclusion. So that was a question. So many of you didn't know what to write, isn't it? So what to write? These are some things you can write. So BIS paper says that what you can achieve in 50 years in terms of financial inclusion, you can achieve through technology in 10 years. So developments in the digital infrastructure, overall tele-density across all areas, across all states have been increasing. The role of digital infrastructure has assumed special significance, especially after COVID-19. So it is this digital infrastructure, it is not meant just for continuous transmission of information. It is just not a medium of transmission of news or something. It is a medium through which economic value can be added. That was felt during COVID situation. We could give education, we could give health, we could give a lot of things during COVID when the normal traditional economy disrupted. Okay. So Digital India program and all has empowered citizens, and it envisions digital infrastructure as a core utility to all citizens. So recently, we could see that whenever we talk about technology adoption, we used to find that the rural-urban divide is a problem. But recent evidences show that it is narrowing down. Still, there are interstate disparities. Of course, the teledensity and the internet adoption of Tamil Nadu is far higher than UP. Okay. So despite all of that, the overall trend is that India has improved. So coming to rural areas and urban areas, in 2014, if you look at the tele-density or the access to telephones, 44% were covered. In urban areas, it was 145. Every house is having 1.5 phones. That's what I meaning. So அப்படி இருந்துச்சு. This gap, how much is the gap here? 100 points is a gap, isn't it? So in the last 6 years, it has narrowed down, and now the gap is less than 50 points. The urban rural gap has been bridging down. Okay. And a positive sign that we see is that since 2019 onwards, the number of rural internet users have surpassed the urban internet users, not in whole terms, the new numbers that have been added, the new additions and net additions have been higher. For example, if you see here, 95 million were added in rural users, 92 million were added in urban users. So if you see the rural growth, it is 200%, urban growth is 158%, which means not only is the gap narrowed, it is fast catching up, isn't it? Rural areas is fast catching up. That's what we can see here. So the gap has narrowed, and it is due to the vision of the Prime Minister to digitally empower the Indian as we march on to something called as decade, not decade. என்னது decade? தெரியாம அவசரத்துல ஹெட்ஏக்னு எழுதிராதீங்க. ஓகே. So tech aid. எழுதிக்கோங்க அதெல்லாம். Right. So as part of this digital infrastructure, they have spoken of many things, but we'll just take UPA as an example here. So UPA adoption, both in terms of its volume, both in terms of its value, has increased. In terms of volume last year, UPA exceeded how much? 50%. It became the most dominant form of electronic transfers. In 2016, 2017, the number says that it was 13%. UPI usage was 13% of volume. Now it has exceeded 52%. Okay. So financial literacy, entrepreneurship, across all this, we can find this. Okay. Now coming to physical infrastructure, they have spoken about roads and all. We will not go into how much roads have been constructed in the last year. How far did they construct? How many days they took? These are all the data. If you want to study, please go and read the survey. No need. So for physical infrastructure, they have spoken about other infrastructures. Two things they have highlighted. One is the national logistics policy. Of course, when we speak about physical infrastructure, we can't miss the recent reforms in the form of National Infrastructure Pipeline, National Monetization Pipeline, and Gati Shakti. Okay. So national logistics policy. The main aim is to reduce the cost of logistics. Today it's in the range of 14 to 18%. The logistics cost of a product is 14 to 18%, which is far higher than global average or optimum levels of 8%. 8% should be the logistics cost, but India it is around 14 to 18%, which is quite high. So therefore, we have to reduce it. So how do we reduce or improve the logistics? One, ensuring the efficiency of the clearance process. For example, at the customs level, at the port. So don't think that for us, we don't need clearance. We are speaking about India as a whole, especially logistics cost will be very high in terms of external trade. Angada logistics cost la adhigama irukum. Okay. So both internal also, but however, the customs clearances, any kind of GST clearances, e-way bill clearances, all of this. If these formalities are quite speedy, then it will help, first of all. Second, quality of trade and transport. Quality of trade and transport, which means roadways should be better, railways should be better, the multimodal connectivity should be better. All of this can be improved. And easing the arranging of competitively priced shipments. Right, competitively priced shipments should be arranged together, should be pooled together, and therefore by this, on all the partners of logistics also can be brought under a database. By this we can improve logistics cost. And in line of that, the last year in 2022 we have launched the national logistics policy. It sets 3 targets. One, reduce the cost of logistics, and it should be comparable to the global benchmark by 2030. So if at that time in global levels the rate has come to 7, we also should be around 7. Right now it is 8 global logistics cost. We are 14 to 18. Improving the logistics performance index. Who releases logistics performance index? Leads index illa, logistics LPI. LPI into the global. Leads index is for India. World Bank. அவங்களுக்கு எதுக்குப்பா இந்த வேலை அப்படின்னா இந்த மாதிரி நிறைய வேலை பார்ப்பாங்க. Okay, so in that rank we need to be top 25 countries and create a data driven support mechanism for logistics. And this year, see, imitating this logistic performance index, we have been bringing a leads index in India. Last year we had ranking. Number 1 was Gujarat, number 2 was Tamil Nadu. Like that we had a rank. This year there has been changes to this leads index. We have categorized states into grades of achiever, fast movers, and aspirers. Aspirers means those who have not yet catched up. Fast movers means something is picking up. The best ones are called as achievers. 90% if they are getting the rank mark, they will be put as achievers. Tamil Nadu is here in the achiever category. Okay, of course all states are there, no need to go into that data. Just change that. Why is this happening? Because it's obvious that a hinterland, Tirupura, do you think that the transport of cost in Tirupura will be less? Transport of cost in Arunachal Pradesh, will it be less? Then how do you rank Arunachal Pradesh and Tamil Nadu and say that Tamil Nadu is first? You see, you are 28th. So this is a bad comparison. So coastal states like that we have compared, hinterland we are comparing. So based on segments only we are comparing under the new leads index. So this is also improving the logistics competitiveness among the states. Okay, it presents lots of data on roads, railways, ports. No need to go into that. Just simple data only they have been given. So inland water transport they have been speaking of. So what are these? See, why is this having a huge potential? Is because of 14,850 kilometers which are navigable in India. The total navigable length is 14,000 kilometers, which is twice that of, what is the coastal line, coastal limit? Twice. So we are nearly 80-90% of the global trade of all shipping happens through this coastline, but we have completely untouched inland waterways. So recognizing this only, we had this national waterways, inland waterways program and all was there. So this year a small amendment was taken to the Inland Vessels Act. The Inland Vessels Act was established in 1917 and repeatedly we were amending. We completely revamped it to our needs. Why we didn't do it at an earlier stage? Because there was hardly 1% of navigation happening in the inland waterways. Now through the policy we are enhancing it. So there is a need for revamping this act, and therefore a new act has been brought, Inland Vessels Act. Comprehensive change within this act. Here state government can declare an water area as a zone and put the specifications for the inland vessels. What kind of weightage it should have, what kind of haulage it should have, what kind of depth it should have. These kind of guidelines they can give. So no need to go into this. This is very minor only. Just know that there has been certain changes empowering the states and also the center to promote and enhance inland water transport. Okay. So targeted increase in the physical infrastructure and reforms to meet the energy demand and focus on the untapped potential like airways and waterways is what is needed to further increase our physical infrastructure. One, targeted increase, reforms to meet our energy demands, and thirdly, untapped potential. So these should be our priorities, and creation of a robust infrastructure, digital infrastructure should be happening. I think yesterday we were speaking about how the government is now commencing with having an open digital public infrastructure for agriculture purposes, solely for agriculture. So these kind of things will push the scope for digital infrastructures. So the synergy between the physical infrastructure and digital infrastructure will be one of the defining features in the near. Okay. So with this, we are concluding our economic survey discussion. Okay, so thank you. And this is not just for ornamental purposes. This is for you. If you want, you can just scan. You can download this PDF. I've attached this PDF because many of you will be asking. Sometimes I'll forget. I'll give it to them. They will forget to upload. So if you want, you can just scan this. And okay. Right. So 12 chapters, just a summary of what we have done. 12 chapters we have completed. One, the state of economy. In the state of economy, what we saw was that the nature of the crisis has been very turbulent. Isn't it? Very turbulent nature. But despite that, India's growth has been resilient. The second chapter was regarding medium-term outlook. In that chapter, what did we focus? Remember, we focused on new age reforms, that how the shocks of the 1998 to 2002, it was able to overcome the shocks and go on a higher trajectory because of these reforms. In that same way, new age reforms have primed this economy for higher growth after this 2022 onwards. The third chapter we discussed about fiscal developments, where we read about how the buoyancy of tax has increased. That has been the main key discussion of our part. Fourthly, monetary movements. In monetary movements, what did we discuss? என்ன பார்த்தோம் ஒன்றும் பெருசா நடக்கல அப்படியா monetary tightening was happening. India was increasing its repo rate, and due to which various sectors, both in the bank, in NBFCs, the IBC, overall financial structure of India has been performing well. Therefore, it has been a good year in terms of financial intermediation. Fifthly, about prices and inflation, tightrope walking was successful, is what is the title of that particular chapter. And we discussed that it has been, of course, a successful way in which inflation has been contained. Sixthly, social infrastructure and employment is a big tent. We have been discussing how there has been a growing importance to the expenditure towards social infrastructure. Okay, and how we need to focus on low hanging fruits, low cost, high returns kind of strategy should be adopted. For example, transformation of aspirational district program. For health, bringing out certain initiatives like deworming. This can help us. That's what we discussed. And in climate change, our discussion was about the dilemmas that developing countries are facing and how proactively the Indian government has been committed towards climate action. In chapter 8, agriculture and food management, we discussed how our focus has now changed from just being a food secure country to towards going or shifting towards nutritional security, going towards millet, and bringing out certain reforms in terms of agriculture, commodity, and trading. Okay, so the 9th chapter, industry, there are many areas that we touched about, in which, of course, we have to increase the share of manufacturing and all is there. One thing that we discussed that was very different this year was about the startup flipping, how startup flipping is happening and how we need to reverse startup flipping. For services, we saw that overall this year has been a good year for services, because finally most of the sectors have shown a double-digit growth and also have come out of the pre-pandemic levels. Okay, so as the 11th chapter in the external sector, we saw that this was a very critical challenge for India last year. But however it might be, the forex reserve are good. The adequacy of forex reserve, we should not only see forex reserve only in terms of the import cover or monthly cover. We should look at it in terms of its base money, monetary M0. We should also compare it to the debt ratios. So comparing all of this itself, India is better, and it can well manage any kind of volatility it faces in terms of its external trade. As the last chapter we discussed as how physical and digital infrastructure, especially in the recent years, more than the traditional outlook of just ramping up railways, roadways, and that, we have been improving our logistics. We have been improving our digital infrastructure. Okay. And along with this, we also discussed the budget also. Right. So thank you. We'll meet. Huh? Pardon? Really? Just 1 second. See now? No? Okay. Of course, it was very difficult to me. I do understand that. We could have cut down a little bit on the discussion. But you see, if you go through pages and pages, sometimes it's very difficult to leave out certain things, isn't it? When you read, sometimes I will feel, okay, this is important. If I don't show this, they might be feeling a little bit betrayed. Like that. Okay, so I'll just share this, go through this document. I've put all the important details. So if you want to revise, just go through the document. No need to go and read economic survey. Some will be providing the highlights of economic survey, the summary of economic survey. If it is very less, you just go through it. Or else, well and enough, you have spent much time on this. This will do. Okay. And one thing, there have been some who have been facing difficulties in understanding what we have been speaking here, mainly on account of your lack of clarity in economics. I should address that first of all. So hopefully, we'll try to have, even I'm planning to take some classes with regarding some 10 hours will take to just touch upon the basics for people who have difficulties. Okay. So no need for those who know economy well. For those who don't have a clarity, who have misunderstood economy, for them, Tamil or session வைக்கலாம் அப்படின்னு plan பண்ணிருக்கேன். Okay, so if that transpires well, we'll notify you. Okay, thank you. நீங்க இன்னொரு அப்ளிகேஷன் போடுங்க. ஐயோ ஆமா.